Welcome to our In Focus discussion tonight on National Preparedness Month. It's observed every year during the month of September to raise awareness about the importance of preparing for disasters and emergencies that could happen at any time. With the extreme weather we've seen throughout the state this year, this topic is relevant, timely, and potentially life-changing for some. Kicking off our conversation tonight is one of our very own meteorologist, Cesar Cornejo. And Cesar, it's good to see you here on the interview set. We're so used to seeing you on the green screen and the Weather Center.
Well, thanks, Rosie. Yeah, no, definitely. It's a little bit of a change, but you know what? Welcomed.
Yeah, we love having you a part of the conversation. Could you recap the extreme weather that we've experienced in the state this year?
Well, Rosie, most of us always think about extreme weather as it's got to be a tornado, flooding, things like that. But the most prominent severe weather and just extreme weather that we've seen has been the excessive heat. We actually continued to see a very hot June, and it really went throughout the summer and even continues until now, as we see that we have that one excessive heat warning over in St. George. And honestly, we can even see, just recap some of the pictures. I have one right here that we should see a thermometer showing that it was quite warm over in Layton. Again, we were seeing plenty of high heat, also flash flooding as we got into monsoon season that really just brought in plenty of rain to southern Utah. Paragona flooding, there was of course the Cedar City flooding, and then even with Delta, we saw significant flooding as well. So Rosie, this was a very, very tremendous kind of year.
It almost felt like southern Utah really did take the brunt of our extreme weather this year. How does this year's extreme weather compare to past years? Is this year ringing any alarms?
Well, so we expect to always see some kind of severe weather, extreme weather kind of happening. The one thing that we saw compared to last year was it was quite dry and just calm, and that led to a very historic drought that just really led into this year being very, very dry earlier. Wildfires, by the time we were into February, March, we saw something starting to spark up as well, which is normally not what we see in a typical year. And one thing that a lot of the Southwest kind of is expected to see with climate change is very, very much just increased variability and kind of seeing the extremes happen, extreme cold, extreme heat, and things of that sort. So this year kind of does, unfortunately, kind of trend in that direction.
And we saw that ripple effect just come from the drought. Utah did break a few weather records this year. What are some that stand out to you?
Well, Rosie, the biggest one that stands out to me was the fact that we tied our all-time record high in Salt Lake City on June 15th, I believe, at 107. Normally, we see that kind of temperature around mid-July, so this was well ahead of its time. And then on top of that, the next one was the earliest 100-degree day for summer, which was on June 4th this year, beating the previous year's record of June 5th. So it just continues to be hotter even earlier.
It definitely felt hotter more and longer this year. Now, with all of this discussion on the extreme weather that we've had, what's causing or contributing to the extreme weather patterns that we've seen this year?
Well, Rosie, the biggest one has been the monsoon. So we've had an abnormally strong monsoon season. Again, we've seen those heat domes really take place and bring in the high heat. Unfortunately, that's what's needed to see that heat dome really kind of drag in that monsoonal flow and bring in moisture with it. So again, that's where we saw some of the heaviest rains and even some of the strongest severe weather that we've had this entire year, mostly in the summer, especially in August.
Now, what about natural disasters? Last year we had that 5.7 magnitude earthquake in Magna in March. What about this year? Have we detected any notable earthquakes or tornadoes in Utah this year?
Well, Rosie, funnily enough, you bring up tornadoes. We did actually have one on September 3rd. We saw this over in Davis County. It was part of just what we saw with this tornado. Unfortunately, it did strike through quite a populated area, but there were no injuries, just property damage. This could have been a much more dangerous situation. And on top of that, we did also see a land spout form over in Weber County. On the earthquake side, we haven't seen any of note. There was one over in eastern Nevada, but other than that, in Utah specifically, we didn't really see any kind of rumblings for us.
Just incredible photos there. I know weather can be unpredictable, but what are some weather activity that you think we could see in the remainder of the year?
Well, Rosie, we're predicted to stay, unfortunately, on the dry side from the Climate Prediction Center going into parts of the winter. Hopefully that can be different. Every year is a little, I want to say, variable. And given that we are going into a La Nina winter, that could mean that we end up seeing that jet stream kind of teetering right besides that Idaho-Utah border. If it dips a little lower, helps bring in some cooler air, we may see a little bit more snow. And I know for the powder hounds out there that want to go out skiing and snowboarding, that's going to be great news, as last year's snowfall wasn't that great.
Definitely. We're waiting for that better snowpack to come back. This month is National Preparedness Month. What would you like people at home to think about when it comes to this topic and what we've discussed in this conversation?
Well, Rosie, the biggest thing is, do you have a plan? And have you spoken to your loved ones about it, just to really be prepared and know how to proceed in a natural disaster? That's the biggest kind of what if when it does happen.
You've been hearing from our own meteorologist, Cesar Cornejo. And Cesar, thank you so much for your insight tonight. We'll see you later in the show. Thanks for staying with us for our second In Focus discussion tonight on National Preparedness Month. Up next in our conversation live via Zoom is Michael Smalden, Executive Director of the Northern Utah chapter of the American Red Cross. Michael, thank you for joining us tonight. We appreciate your time.
No, thanks for allowing me to be here.
Michael, what are some of the disasters and emergencies that the American Red Cross has been responding to this year in Utah?
Yeah, so we have responded to numerous home fires. Home fires are the Red Cross's #1 disasters that we respond to. So a lot of single-family homes, multi-family homes, especially in the Salt Lake Valley and Davis and Weber County areas. Of course, we seen a lot of disasters happening down in southern Utah with flooding that has occurred down there in this summer.
What kind of damage or impact have your volunteers seen come from these disasters?
Yeah, not only is it just property damage, the emotional damage that happens with our clients is pretty tremendous. And so, especially down in southern Utah with the flooding, we're seeing a lot of basements and first floors of homes just filled with water and sewage. And then, of course, fire is a very destructive force. So that's, very devastating to families when a home is destroyed by fire.
Now, Michael, it seems like the American Red Cross is always helping out with all sorts of different disasters and emergencies. How do you train your volunteers so that they're ready to help Utahns in need no matter the situation?
Yeah, we take, time to just make sure our volunteers are go through a training course. They take numerous courses on how to respond, how to interact with clients, and then how to take care of their own selves as they're working to help the client in this devastating times. And so it's a training regimen that the Red Cross does with each of our volunteers, and we are so happy to be able to provide that so they can help make sure that the clients are taken care of.
Now, you all meet with so many victims and help them get back on their feet. What difference can preparation make for residents who get caught in the pathway of these emergencies and these disasters?
Yeah, there's always 3 simple actions you can take before disaster strikes. That's the first one is get a kit. Build your emergency kit with a gallon of water per person, non-perishable food, a flashlight, battery, powered radio, first aid kit, medications, supplies for your infants and babies, and of course, don't forget your pets. A lot of people tend to forget those, so make sure you have treats and dog food and cat food and wherever kind of pet food you need for your pets on hand and your emergency kit. The next thing you can do is make a plan. That means practice your evacuation plan, what you're going to do if you're at work and your kids are at school. Make sure that you have a plan in place to be able to meet up and make sure your family stays together. And then, of course, stay informed. That's making sure that you pay attention to what your city and county and state officials are telling you. A good way to keep on track of that information and staying informed is to follow your elected officials and your sheriff's departments on Twitter, which they tend to post things to keep their communities updated when disasters are happening.
And what about the third preparation tip? I remember you said there were three. So one was prepare an emergency kit. The second one was get a plan together. What are some other tips or advice you would have for emergency preparation?
Yeah, I think a lot of times, pets are forgotten, right? When you are evacuating out of your home, your pets have to evacuate too. So you want to make sure that you have a plan to make sure that your pets are taken care of. That means looking for hotels that allow pets, or finding a pet hotel or a kennel, somewhere you could take your pet to in case you have to evacuate out of your home and can't stay there. So pet preparation is important. Another thing is if you have small babies, infants, and children, make sure you have those things that are going to take care of them. So that's like small toys, something that's going to help them make sure they're comforted as a disaster is happening, as we know that's very stressful for everyone. So just making sure that you have those type of items in your kit can help make your evacuations a little more pleasant, even when it's not a pleasant situation.
And Michael, what resources are available for people who may become potential victims of disasters in the near future?
Yeah, of course. One of the greatest resources the state of Utah has is 211 and our partners with United Way, who have a vast system to make sure that people, you can, use 211.org or call 211 on your phone. They can help you get resources. Another thing too is you can go to redcross.org and learn about all the information. You can find plenty of ways on there to how to make a kit, how to make a plan, and ways to make that plan for you and your family, and then how different ways you can stay informed in that process.
You've been hearing from Michael Smalden, Executive Director of the Northern Utah chapter of the American Red Cross. Michael, thank you so much for being a part of our conversation tonight.
No, thank you so much.
We'll be right back. Welcome to our third and final In Focus discussion tonight on National Preparedness Month. Rounding out our conversation tonight is Ken Crowdy, Community Outreach Specialist for Be Ready Utah with the Utah Division of Emergency Management. Ken, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Thanks, Rosie. It's a pleasure being here, and on behalf of the Be Ready Utah team, thank you and Channel 4 for your emphasis on National Preparedness Month.
Always an honor to be your partner. Now, even though National Preparedness Month is observed during the month of September, is this a topic that you think Utahns should be thinking about year-round?
You know, it's interesting. Disasters just don't happen in September. We've had a lot of reminders this year especially, and the last couple of years, with all that's happened, and not just here in Utah, but around the world, of course. You know, FEMA defines a disaster as a destructive occurrence that overwhelms the resources of individuals, families, and communities. And when you think about it, if you have the resources, it doesn't have to be a disaster, it can be an adventure. And so now's the time when the sun is shining to get those resources, get those plans in place, and be able to allay the fears that come from not being prepared.
Well said. Ken, what are some of the natural disasters and emergencies, though, that Utahns should be the most concerned about?
Well, severe weather, of course, is probably the most common. But the one that really kind of shakes us in our boots is the earthquake. We are on the Wasatch Fault, and so that is a concern for us. But severe weather and, of course, earthquake, we even have had a couple of tornadoes. But severe weather is a special concern, and you just have to be able to think about anything that could happen, and it could.
Yeah, we saw a lot of severe weather this year. Well, in our last segment, we already talked about how to assemble emergency kits with the American Red Cross. What are some other preparations that Utahns can take to keep themselves and their loved ones safe?
Well, you know, having a disaster supply kit or a go kit or emergency kit is critical. But in addition to that, another resource might be to, first of all, make a list of the 12 or 16 items that you need to have that you can't put in your kit. Maybe it's a CPAP machine or a laptop. Maybe it's family albums, something that you know is so precious to you. And make a list and put that list on an empty duffel bag. When disaster strikes, sometimes we just can't think of things. But to have that list on the duffel bag that's empty, you go to that and you can start going around the house and accumulating the things that you've listed so that you don't forget the things that are most important. That's one extra thing you might be able to do. In addition, I think it's important to have an outside contact, an out-of-state contact that you've established so that you can let them know your situation. Oftentimes you can call Nebraska, you can call another state when you can't call across the street. And so having an out-of-state contact is important. And then just practicing evacuation plans in your own home, having a couple of points of where people will gather after an evacuation, one near your home and then one maybe a couple of blocks away in case your home is uninhabitable. And so those are a couple of things you might do in addition to having your disaster supply kit.
All great ideas and great tips, something for all of us to think about. Ken, what are some tips for someone who may have someone in their family with special needs?
Well, you know, that's a great question, and sometimes they're forgotten. Utah actually has a special needs registry, and people can go online who have access and functional needs and register those needs so that the first responders know their whereabouts. The other thing that families can do with that situation is to make sure that plans take into account the special need that's required. Making neighbors aware of the situation also can be helpful. So those are the couple of things that you can do when you were talking about people with access and functional needs or special needs.
What about pets? I know Michael did address that in the last segment. What are some things that you feel can be done to make sure that our pets are taken care of in case of an emergency?
You know, we've learned a lot about pets since Hurricane Katrina. We found that people will die rather than leave their pets. And so pets are like people. They need food, they need water, they may need some medication. And so having a special bag just for the pet, I think, is an important thing. Perhaps in the bag you might have an extra leash or a collar, making sure that on the collar you've got the rabies shots and so forth that have been identified. You might have other registration information in a plastic bag and put that in the kit as well for the pet. So those are the couple of things you might be able to do when you're thinking about pets. They are just like people to people that have pets.
Very true. I have a Labrador Retriever and I would never leave him behind no matter what happened. Ken, what do you think Utahns are typically most unprepared for? Those who have not taken the steps for emergency preparedness, what is usually maybe the top 1, 2, or 3 things that they tend to not be prepared for?
That's a good question, and I suppose it varies depending upon the individual. I think just a simple evacuation plan. There have been situations where people have had a fire or something in the home. They run outside the house. People think that there's somebody else in the house because they haven't set up some sort of an evacuation point for them to meet at. They go back into the house and there's a death, and the person who they think was in the house is actually outside the house. So that's a simple thing. But evacuation plans are something that I don't hear a lot about as we talk with people. And then the other thing is just making sure that your kit is updated. The diapers that you had in your kit, you know, from years ago, you may not need anymore because you don't have the baby. And so it's important, I think, for people to go through their kits and update them as well. A couple of simple things.
Ken, final thoughts. What message would you like to leave our viewers with tonight, or what would you like them to think about when it comes to this topic?
Take action. Do something tonight. Do something every week this National Preparedness Month to ensure your preparedness. We do have a webinar coming up on September the 16th. Put that on your calendar. September the 16th, 6 to 9, we have a Be Ready Utah webinar. You can go to eventbrite.com, click on Be Ready Utah, and it's a free webinar. You can register for that, and we have several workshops that you'll find very interesting. One on family preparedness plans. We have another one that's on water and water storage and filtration. We have one on a couple of families, 3 families that are going to share their experiences about becoming prepared. And so those are a couple of things, but mainly tonight, do something, take action. Make something happen with regards to emergency preparedness.
Well said. You've been hearing from Ken Crowdy, Community Outreach Specialist for Be Ready Utah with the Utah Division of Emergency Management. Ken, thank you so much for your insight and the great tips tonight.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.